Okay, so I want to talk about the song Dixie, and this is from the Civil War heritagetrails.org. Ironically, it was written by a Northerner, Daniel Dakota Emmett. Bryant's Blackface Minstrels premiered it in New York City, April 4th, 1859. I Wish I Was in Dixieland was an instant hit, and its popularity spread quickly. Dixie is still among the most recognizable of all American songs. By 1860, it was especially enjoyed in the southern states and soon also among Confederate Army bands. However, many Union bands also played Dixie during the war, or versions of it, and President Lincoln included Dixie among his favorites. Quick side note, Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, was a member of a large and wealthy slave-owning Kentucky family. She was well educated. Southerners accused her as a traitor to her birth, and citizens loyal to the Union suspected her of treason. Every Confederate troop knew the words to Dixie, as the song depicts the idyllic view of what life in the American South was like in the 1850s, around the time of the song that was written. Okay, so that's a little bit about the song Dixie, and we can take a listen to that with a link provided in the description box below. Okay, next. California had recently become a state in 1862, and the Pacific Railroad Act started building a Transcontinental Railroad that would link the United States from east to west. Over the next 7 years, two companies would race toward each other from Sacramento, California, on one side, to Omaha, Nebraska, on the other, struggling against great risk before they met in Utah on May 10, 1869. Many Chinese workers were hired to build the railroad. The Chinese had come earlier to California to work as miners in the gold rush. Their story is full of difficulty and dangerous work. The following song is part of a musical about the life of a young Chinese railroad worker who took on a dangerous job. The new U.S. musical chronicles early Chinese railroad workers from 1863 to 1869. Its genre is a musical. And one of the things that the Chinese brought with them from China that created an agricultural industry is something called the Bing cherry. We've all seen this in our supermarkets today. The story starts in Oregon. So a lot of the Chinese workers, of course, that came here, stayed here. They bought, in the beginning, small patches of agricultural land in the Northwest. And one of the favorite crops was the Bing cherry. So, as you can see, like I say, you go to a supermarket today and you find them everywhere. And that originally comes from the Chinese railroad workers. So let's take a listen to the musical about the dangerous jobs of a young Chinese railroad worker. From the description box below, you can find a link. So the Transcontinental Railroad is completed. And as we talked about earlier, when young men grew up, I mean, today you want to be a basketball player or a baseball player or a rock star. And back in Mark Twain's time, you wanted to be a steamboat captain. Well, now, during these times, young boys growing up wanted to be a train driver, be the driver of a locomotive. So lots of songs and stories about heroic railroad men start to come in vogue. So this is a story about a railroad laborer called John Henry. So as the story goes, John Henry was hired as a steel driver for the railroad. Later, the railroad company brought in a steam drill to speed up the work on the tunnel. It was said that the steam drill could drill faster than any man. The challenge was on, man against machine. John Henry was known as the strongest, the fastest, and the most powerful man working on the railroad. He went up against the steam drill to prove that the black worker could drill a hole through the rock farther and faster than the drill could. Using two 10-pound hammers, one in each hand, he pounded the drill so fast and so hard that he drilled a 14-foot hole into the rock. Legend says that the drill was only able to drill 9 feet. John Henry beat the steam drill, but later died of exhaustion. So, a famous song called John Henry was written about this heroic feat, folk tale. So let's take a listen to the song John Henry. You can find a link in the description box below. So another locomotive engineer that became famous through music, again a folk tale, is the story of Casey Jones. And Casey Jones was a locomotive engineer who became a folk hero after his death in a train crash in 1900 and was commemorated in a number of songs. In April 29, 1900, Jones, then an engineer for the Illinois Central Railroad, arrived in Memphis, Tennessee, having driven a train from Mississippi. In Memphis, he found out the engineer scheduled to take the return run that night was sick, so Jones volunteered to take his place. When he pulled out of the Memphis station in the early hours of April 30th, the train was running late, so he hurried to make up for lost time. As the train rounded a curve in Vigan, Mississippi, it collided with another train on the tracks, but not before Jones told his firemen to jump to safety. Jones remained on board, supposedly to try to slow the train and save his passengers. and was the only person to die in the accident. Following Jones' death, Walter Saunders, an African-American railroad worker in Mississippi, developed a ballad about the fallen engineer that became popular with other men in railroad yards. So let's take a listen to Casey Jones. We can find a link in the description box below. Okay, so our next slide, we're going to talk about the regional area of the Far West. The conservative West developed through large investment in industry, yet where inhabitants continued to resent the Eastern interest that initially controlled that investment. The Far West spans several states, including Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Utah, Nevada, Nebraska, Kansas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, North and South Dakota, Washington, Oregon, and California. Okay, something that has become part of popular American culture is cowboy clothing. And here's an article by Laurel E. Wilson. And she says, cowboys, vasqueros, gauchos. Each of these words conjures a different image. Yet all these occupations originated in Salamanca and Old Castile region of the 12th century Spain, where cattle herders wore low-crowned hats, bolero jackets, sashes, tight-fitting trousers, and spurred boots. The cowboy hat is a hat with a high crown, wide brim, best known as the defining piece of attire for the North American cowboy. Today it is worn by many people and is particularly associated with ranch workers in the West and Southern United States, Western Canada, and Northern Mexico. With many country music performance and with participants in North American rodeo circuit, it is recognized around the world as part of Old West apparel. The cowboy hat was known today has many antecedents to its design, including Mexican hats such as the sombrero, with various designs of wide-brimmed hat worn by farmers and stockmen in eastern United States, as well as the designs used by the United States military cavalry. The concept of a broad-brimmed hat with a high crown worn by a rider on horseback can be seen as far back as the Mongolian horsemen of the 13th century. It is not clear when the cowboy hat received its name. However, European Americans in the western United States originally had no standard headwear. People moving west wore many styles of hats, including top hats, bowlers, remains of Civil War headgear, and sailor hats. Contrary to popular belief, it was the bowler, not the cowboy hat, that was the most popular in the American West. The cowboy hat was most likely adopted from Mexican vasqueros before the invention of the modern design. Blue jeans. Jeans are a type of pants or trouser typically made of denim or dungaree cloth. Often the term jeans refers to a particular style of trouser called blue jeans, which is invented by Jacob W. Davis in partnership with Levi Strauss and Company in 1871. Originally designed for gold miners, modern jeans were popularized as casual wear by Marlon Brando and James Dean in their 1950s films, particularly The Wild One and Rebel Without a Cause, leading to the fabric becoming a symbol of rebellion among teenagers, especially members of the greaser subculture. From the 1960s onward, jeans became common among various youth subcultures and subsequently young members of the general population. Today, they are one of the most popular types of specialty trousers in Western culture. Historic brands include Levi's, Lee, and Wrangler. Okay, so Western culture has also added a special kind of dancing that comes from the West. It's called line dancing. Country and Western dance, also called line dancing, encompasses many dance forms or styles, which are typically danced to country Western music, which are stylistically associated with American country and or Western traditions. Many of these dancers were tried and true dance steps that have been put aside for many years and became popular under the name country Western, cowboy, or country dancing. So finally we have music. Western music is a form of country music composed by and about the people who settled and worked throughout the Western United States and Western Canada. Western music celebrates the lifestyle of the cowboy on the open ranges, Rocky Mountains, and the prairies of Western North America. Directly related musically to Old English, Irish, Scottish, and folk ballads, also Mexican folk music of northern Mexico and southwestern United States influenced the development of this genre. So we have a couple of songs for you. GLEN Campbell, a famous country western singer, sings a song called Wichita Lineman. So not all songs are about cowboys. A lineman is the person that fixes the wires of the telegraph or telephone or those high energy wires that string across the prairie. It's a simple tale of a lonely telephone repairman working in the vast open plains of the American Midwest. Wichita Lineman is one of the most perfectly realized pop songs of all time. So take a listen to GLEN Campbell, Wichita Lineman. Okay, so our next Western music song is sung by Paula Cole, and it's entitled Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? And it glamorizes cowboys. The strong, silent, rugged macho man in a Stetson hat has always been a powerful image. Women wanted to marry a John Wayne or a Gary Cooper, while men wanted to be John Wayne or Gary Cooper. Paula Cole is singing about the reality behind that image. The narrator of the song fell in love with a rugged, macho, rural male and married him, and only then learned that life with the real cowboy isn't so glamorous after all. Cowboys, ranchers, and farm workers in rural America don't make a lot of money. So she and her husband are barely scraping by financially. They had to sell their car, and he takes a job at a farm far away. So she's left to raise the children by herself, working her fingers to the bone, while her husband drinks away the little money he earns. She's left wondering, what happened to the man I idolized? I thought he was going to be the kind of romantic cowboy I saw in the movies. But there's nothing romantic or glamorous about this life at all. The video ends on a happier note. They resolve their issues and come together in the end. A quick note about Paula Cole. She was raised in Massachusetts and studied at Berklee College of Music in Boston. Okay, so we have a short video clip of Paula Cole's song, Where Have All the Cowboys Gone? So take a look at that. And our third song is a standard. It's been around for quite a while. Everybody knows it. It's entitled Rocky Mountain High, written and sung by John Denver. John Denver's more of a kind of a folk music singer. This takes on a Western theme. Rocky Mountain High is primarily inspired by John Denver's move to Aspen, Colorado. It took him about 3 years to write the song, and it's about his love of the state. The seventh stanza makes a reference to the destruction of the mountain's beauty by commercial tourism. The song was considered a major piece of 1970s pop culture and has become well associated with Colorado history. After years as an unofficial anthem for Colorado, in 2007, the Colorado General Assembly made Rocky Mountain High one of the 2 official state songs. You can find a link in the description box below. Okay, let's talk about The Wizard of Oz. The book was published 120 years ago, written by L. Frank Baum as a children's fantasy novel. Lyman Frank Baum was born in Chittenden, New York in 1856 to a wealthy, devout Methodist family. He had German, Scots-Irish, and English ancestry and was the 7th of 9 children. Eventually moves to Los Angeles in his adult life. Baum started writing early in life, possibly prompted by his father, who bought him a cheap printing press. He writes The Wizard of Oz in 1900. It becomes a theatrical production, then a movie in 1939, starring Judy Garland. Garland was 16 years old for the filming of The Wizard of Oz. The story The Wizard of Oz, a classic legend, a children's story that will never grow old. Quotes such as, Toto, I have a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore. Lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And there's no place like home, are the ones that will always pop into our heads when someone says, The Wizard of Oz. Dorothy's long, adventurous trip down the yellow brick road is something that everyone loves to read and watch. It's a story that touches all of us. Hearing Judy Garland as Dorothy sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow left an impression on every individual who watched the movie. It was as if we felt that she was feeling at the moment that there was a better place somewhere out there over the rainbow. Viewers were able to relate to a character, whether it was the scarecrow in need of a brain, the Tin Man in need of a heart, or the cowardly lion in need of courage. The obvious message of the story is that there's no place like home, says Lauren Holberg, who wrote an analysis from a Jung psychological point of view. An economic point of view states the story is an allegory for 1900s American economic policy, which held the gold standard, a policy linking the value of currency to the value of gold. Impoverished Southerners and Midwesterners wanted silver to be given value again. In Baum's novel, Yellow Brick Road leads to the fraudulent wizard, whereas silver shoes possess immense power. Baum contrasts the bleak landscape of rural Kansas with the lush greenery of Oz. In comparison to the Emerald City, Kansas seems miserable and impoverished, which reflects the socioeconomic state of the post-Civil War United States. Eva Cassidy from the No Words, No Song website states, the song Somewhere Over the Rainbow, written by Yip Harburg, has been interpreted to mean that human beings are dreamers. We all want to be somewhere else, doing something else, and sometimes with someone else. But we've got mortgages, families, responsibilities, bills to pay, a position in society to keep up. Even people who consider themselves outside mainstream society have their position as an outsider to keep up, so there's no escape. Sense of wanting to be somewhere else, dreaming of a happier place, is exactly what Yip Harburg so beautifully conjures up in his lyrics. Is Israel Kamakawiwo'ole was an Hawaiian singer, lyricist, musician, and Hawaiian sovereignty activist. His melody of Somewhere Over the Rainbow was subsequently featured in several films, television programs, and commercials. So let's take time to watch Israel's music video, Somewhere Over the Rainbow.